open the business model. So the navigation for the business model is go to your demand installation folder, demand planner, desktop folder. Within that, there's something called modeler.
Module. Okay.
Okay, right? So once you're here, so this is a home window which it shows up. Okay, so
Mhm.
within that, go to the configuration. So then you'll find something called configure series, right?
Series. Okay.
Click on this. So whenever you install any Demantra, whenever you install Demantra application, by default it gives all the standard series. Okay,
Okay.
but there is a flexibility. You can create a custom series as well.
Yes.
Okay, so let's
Yes.
go to the existing standard series today. We'll understand the different properties. Okay, what a series is, what kind of properties it holds, what is the importance of each property, right? So once my issue gets resolved, then we'll go to the worksheet and we'll try to see the same series in the worksheet, and then we'll try to create a custom series as well.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to I'll show one or two examples with two different properties, right? Okay, let's start with the history.
Okay.
Okay, so history is a series which holds the data uh, which are populating in this particular column, the one which we saw yesterday, actual underscore quantity column from sales data table.
Okay.
Okay, so since it's a standard measure, I am saying that this series holds the data which is stored in this particular column, actual underscore quantity, in sales data table. But you can always change the property as well. There is a place where you define from which column, from which table you want to show the data for that particular series, right? But
Okay.
since it's standard series across the up, like whenever you install Demantra, this actual, like if you have not done any changes, if you have not performed any modifications to this measure, to this series, right? So data in this series will always show the data from this actual interest quantity from sales data table.
Okay.
Clear?
Okay.
Right. Now we'll go to the each property of a series. Okay, let's start with the history series. So before going to that, right, series are of two types.
Yes.
Okay, one is standard series, another is custom series.
Okay.
Okay, standard is the one which comes out of box when installed Demantra. Custom series is the one which you create based on your business requirement, right?
Yes.
And within this, like even this standard series or a custom series, you can again have two types of series. One is non-editable series, other is editable series.
Okay.
Non-editable series is the one where you will only read the data in the worksheet, meaning it will display some data on the worksheet in that particular measure, that is only for read-only purpose, where you cannot modify any data. It won't allow you to do any changes for it won't allow you to do any changes to the measure or a data which it is holding. That is a non-editable measure. Editable measure is the one where you can do some overrides, where user can do some changes.
Okay.
Hmm? I'll give a best example. Okay, so for example, let's assume since you are buyer, right? So
Yes.
you raised one purchase order,
Yes.
okay, of 10 quantity, but
Okay.
later point of time you want to change the purchase order quantity. You can change from 10 to 5 or 15, right?
Yes.
So that means it's allowing you to do some changes to the ordered quantity.
Yes.
Correct. So similar way, in Demantra also there is this flexibility where you can do the changes to a selected measure if it's a editable measure.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll give an example where you use this editable measures and where you use this non-editable measures,
Okay.
right? So we spoke about two things. One is standard measure. So when I say measure, right, it's nothing but series. Okay, in cloud you call it as measures. Okay, so
Okay.
there are two types of series. One is standard series and other one is custom series. Within that, again you'll find two kinds. One is editable series, other is non-editable series.
Okay.
Right. First, we'll talk about the non-editable series. Right.
And
So
server expression and client expression are different.
we'll go to that. I have
Yeah.
not come to that
Yeah.
point. I'll explain that.
Okay.
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 We'll see one after the other. Okay.
Okay.
So first, we'll talk about a non-editable series.
Okay.
Okay, so to explain you that example, right, I'll consider this history series because history series is a non-editable series.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll talk about in which scenarios you will make the series as a non-editable, and in which scenarios you'll make the series as a editable. Okay,
Yes.
now let's start with history. First, history series. So these are first this see these are the different property details: general properties, display properties, lookup properties, data properties, expression properties, security. Okay, let's start with the general properties. So general properties has these many fields. Okay, series id, series name, internal name. Okay, all this. Now series id is nothing but a unique id of a series. Like whenever you create an employee in the system, right, it employee gets the employee id, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Employee id is always unique. You cannot have same employee id to a different employees, right? In the same way, for each series which you create, you will get some series id is a auto generated by the system.
Okay.
Okay, now series name. Okay, history and is a series name which you are given for this particular series. So series name is nothing but the name of a that particular series, like with which name you want to call that particular series. Okay, so this user can change it, like it is a user editable field.
Okay.
Okay, now internal name. So this is a internal code which stores. Okay,
Okay.
same like how would I say,
I think it's a database column, right? Which
uh
will present in the table.
exactly, true. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
like a database column which is present in the uh, table. Okay. Now, yeah, we call refer it as a internal name, right?
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure this one show as query. We can ignore this. So,
Okay.
period association is the one which talks about whether you want to make a series editable or non-editable for a selected period. And before going to that, we have to talk about the editable. See, these
Okay.
two are interdependent. Okay, so editable I mentioned as no, right?
Yes.
Meaning you want to make this series as a editable measure.
Okay.
Sorry, non-editable measure. Since you made as a no, this is a non-editable measure, meaning you cannot do any changes to the data which is part of this or this particular series is holding, since it's non-editable. So
Okay.
for which period you want to make it non-editable? You want to make this series non-editable for both history and future,
Okay.
history and forecasting period.
Yeah, for custom page. Yes.
Okay, so if I click on this editable, it is only two options, yes or no, meaning you want to make it series editable or non-editable. Since a no, right? But period association is multiple things. Say
Yeah.
there are three values to it: history, forecast,
Uh,
history and forecast. So
Right.
based on the selection, you can make the series editable only for history or only for the future, only both for history and
Right.
forecast.
Yeah.
And you can make the series non-editable only for the history, only for the forecast, both history and forecast. So based on the selection of these properties, your series definition or the behavior will change.
Okay.
Okay, so whenever you create any custom series, you can play around with these options and you can understand how these properties will work.
Okay.
Okay, so hint message is a description of a series. Like whenever you are creating any series, like for example history I created, but I'm a user, I don't know what actually history is. So you can give some description, meaningful description, so that user can understand, okay, this series is meant for this particular purpose.
Okay. Sales, actual sales, right?
Yeah, something like that. So it's some meaningful description of a series, so that you can user can understand the purpose of that particular
Okay.
series. Okay, so we can ignore this. Next is the display properties. Any questions here?
Yeah, internal name. I told now it's sales. How sales? Can you
Hmm.
explain this internal name sales?
Yes, I'll explain. Just
Yeah.
park it, okay? So it's
Okay.
an internal name of a table, okay? Sorry, it's internal name of a series. I'll show where you see that why it's useful and how it is useful, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, when I go to the table, right, I'll show you. Okay, just give
Okay.
me some. Allow me to complete this. Then I'll show you this
Okay.
all this, okay?
Okay.
Next is display properties. See, display property is very simple and straightforward. Like whenever, see in Demantra, right? When you open a worksheet, there are two ways you can read the data. One is in the table format, and other one is in a uh, this one minute. Huh? Okay. So whenever you see the data in the worksheet, you can see the data in two ways. One is in a table
Okay.
format, other one is a graph format. Okay. So you can make the series in a table format or a graph format or in a both formats. Like whenever you select that series in the worksheet, either you can say like, see the data in the table format or in a graph format or in both formats. So that's the reason you have this many.
Okay.
So you can give the color coding of the your graph, like when you select this series what should graph it should have and what kind of graph it should be, okay, etc. Right. And next is summary. This is bit important display. It's like how we want to display the numbers, right? Whether you want to display the without any decimals or you want to with the decimals, different kinds of, okay, if you have a date measure, date series, like what kind of format you want to display. Okay. Next, function is the one bit important. Like whenever see for example, if you are using Excel sheet, right? So for example, you have a salary column, right? You
Yes.
have 10 employees. 10 employees has different salaries, right? At the end of the last row you want to see the total, right? So
Yes.
similarly in a worksheet, right, whenever you open any measure, you can include a summary, whether you want to see the total of that particular all the records, or you want to see the average, or you want to use a count, max, min, like based on your requirement you can use this summary function, right? Or you can write your own expression also.
Okay.
Okay.
For calculation purpose. Okay.
Yes, correct. So you can create no summary also. It again depends.
Uh,
Okay.
okay. It's a function is server expression or
No, see, this is standard one. Okay, this is
extended.
standard.
Okay.
Yes. So client expression you can create.
Okay.
Okay, this is standard. Okay. Abhishek, can you give me 1 minute? I'll be back. Huh?
Okay. Okay.
Just
Okay.
a minute.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So this is about this one. Then we'll go to the lookup properties. This will skip from for timing. Okay. So these
Okay.
are different LOE properties. We'll talk whenever we come to that scenario. Okay.
Okay.
Now the data. This is very important. Okay.
Okay.
This window. See this window. General properties, data properties, and expression properties. These are very important when you define any series. Okay.
Okay.
Let's talk about data properties. Now this plays a very like these properties are very important when you create any series, right? The series behavior mainly depends on this, okay, how it behaves. Okay, so for example, first is data table. Okay, so data table is the name of a table, represents like from which table you want to pick the data for this measure or for this series to display the data. Okay, for example, my history series is built on top of sales data table. Okay, and within sales data table you have so many columns, right? So
Yes.
from which column you want to pick the data, that is
Picture.
actual underscore quantity table.
Okay. Column. Yeah.
Yeah, basically actually this is not required also, you can keep this also blank. I'll tell you why this is not required basically here. Okay, But since it's standard one, I think they, 1 minute, I'll close and reopen it. I don't know why they made it. Maybe you can check in your system also when you open it. Maybe I changed it when I did some other demos, but this should be null also. That should be okay because see, basically I'll tell you that. Okay, for time being, so this is table from which you're getting the data, from which you're reading the data, and this is a column from
Where
which you
that,
pull the data to see the, to show the data for this series in a table or in a worksheet, right? Then display type is like what kind of series it could be. It is a numeric series, or it could be a characteristics, or it could be a data, date. Okay,
okay, okay,
so this kind of, so it's a numeric one, right? So you can ignore this. So important one is this one, proportional. Okay, so proportional one is mainly useful when you create a editable series where user can do some modifications. For read only series, this is not important. Okay, so we'll talk about when you talk about the editable series. Okay, so rest all you can ignore it. Okay, and this is important. Like, aggregate function is important. So whenever you are seeing the pulling the series from the worksheet, like how you want to make it, whether you want to see some average, mean, max, weighted average. So what it does is, so basically Demantra, you can see the data at a different levels, correct? Item level, organization level, customer level. You can read the data at different level. So when you're moving up and down, right, when you're navigating in the system in the worksheet from item to organization or organization to item, how we want to see the data. Let's take an example. I'll write here. What's the purpose of that aggregation disaggregation?
fourth, no.
So let's understand what actually aggregation is. Okay,
Okay,
so that you'll understand. Okay, see, let's assume I have organization M1,
okay,
right? Within that organization I have an items AS1, AS2, AS3,
three, yes,
some AS4. Okay,
okay,
I, for this items I have a quantity of, I'm just giving an example to understand that aggregation functionality. Okay,
okay,
30 and 40. Okay, see, in Demantra, I think you are aware, you can read the data at any level which you want. For example, if I want to see the total quantity, let's consider this a history quantity, okay,
yes,
or booking quantity, bookings quantity, right? So for example, I want to see at organization level what is the booking quantity, right?
mm,
So when I want to see it booking quantity at organization level, it will sum of these.
the
So
sum of these ones, right,
it will be 100.
yes,
What you call it as, it's aggregation. You are aggregating the data to organization level.
okay,
For example, I want to see the quantity, total quantity at organization item level only for these two items, for
okay,
example,
okay,
right? In that case, what will be the total? It would be 30,
30, 30, yeah,
right? So you're trying to see the numbers at a different levels. Like if you say at organization level it is 100, but you are trying to see only for these two items it is 30. But
right,
if you want to say the individual item level, it's 10, 20, 30, 40.
right,
Since I'm using a sum function, it is 100, right? But if I use average, what would be my number? It would be different, right?
yes,
It is
25,
25, right? So
yeah,
similarly, that is the use of this function, average function, sorry, aggregation function.
education,
So that, okay,
Okay.
So most of the cases, 19% use some, right? Unless until you have any specific requirement from business to use max, min, or average.
Okay.
Okay, so these I never used. General we
But
keep as
it is using the like quantity column, right?
yeah. See,
Okay.
it always go with the numeric numbers only.
Okay.
See, because it's a numeric series here, right?
Yeah, numeric series.
Right. Okay. So that's about the data property. So you should be very careful. This one, two, three data table, update table, field, data type, and this aggregation proportion. See, this data field is very important. Okay, I'll tell you why.
Mm.
When we see the different scenarios. Okay,
Okay.
are we good here?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's go to the expression properties. See, this one we are talking about server expression, client expression. You're asking me, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, see, this window has multiple things. Okay, the important, see, all are important, I would say.
Okay.
But mostly used are server expression, client expression. These are mostly used when you created
Mm.
series. This A expression color coding are mainly depends mainly on your requirement.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'll tell you what is a client expression, what is a server expression. Okay. So server expression is mainly created on top of a database column.
Okay.
Okay. So if you see here, actual quantity is a column within your sales data table,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Right. So, but if you see here in my data properties, what I mentioned sales data table. Pick the
Yes,
column from
yes.
the sales data table, but in
Mm.
the expression you're seeing branch underscore data. Why?
Mm.
So, it's a standard functionality. Business modeler will always refer or will understand sales data table with the alias name branch underscore data.
Okay.
So whenever you're writing any expression with respect to a sales data table, like for example, if you're creating a series and you want to pull like data from the sales data table from a specific column, then you have to always use a branch underscore data dot that specific column. If
Okay.
I try to use the sales data, it will throw an error. For example, just for understanding purpose, what I'll do instead of branch underscore data, I use sales underscore data. Okay, I'll
It
try
will
to
not pick up. Okay.
see it will clearly tell you replace it with branch underscore data.
Okay, it is giving. Okay.
Okay, so
Mm.
you should always use a branch underscore data. Okay, and some function you can use the average function expression. Okay, because you are trying to aggregate and disaggregate the data, right? Now this hash unit hash is there, right? This mainly used for the conversion purpose. Okay, for example, you are into a how would I say? Uh,
Unit conversion. Okay, unit conversion. Unit of measurement.
Exactly. So basically, if you want to convert from kilos to grams, right,
Okay.
or a box to pieces, so
Mm.
in that kind of cases, you use this hash unit hash. So whenever you change the conversion method in the worksheet, it automatically changes the conversion.
Okay.
Okay, there's a use. Okay,
Okay.
so server expression always built on base of a database column.
Okay.
Okay, I'll tell you the difference first after discussing these two. Sorry.
Okay.
So client expression is like how would I say? This is based on a series name.
Okay.
Okay. So here, whenever you create any server expression, let's see if you have any. See here, I just for example I'm showing this since it doesn't have a client expression. See, let's go to this. See, this is a series name basically. This is not a database column.
Okay.
So client expression always you define using a series, not with a database column.
Mm. Okay.
Okay. So I'll tell you why and what is the difference between this client expression and server expression.
Okay.
Okay. Client server expression always does the calculation at lowest level
Okay.
and it aggregates. Okay. Hmm. I'll try to show you here as an example. First we'll see server expression, how it works. Okay,
Okay.
so let's see. Now my requirement is to multiply these two and show me at aggregated level,
Okay.
organization level. Okay, now first generally what it does is, okay, so basically it does it at each combination level, and finally it will put the total here. What is this total? 456.40, right? So this means server expression. First what it's doing is doing at a lowest level. First do this, put here, do this, put in. At the end of the calculation, we will try to show the sum at a organization level. Okay.
Okay.
Client expression is bit different. Okay. Client expression, the way it works is,
It's
first
a stored series, right? Server expression.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
Okay.
Okay. So first see client extension, what it will do. First it will add everything. What is this? 105, right?
Okay.
I'll put 105 here. Okay. Then it will sum of all this. How much is this? Not this one,
Four
sorry.
five six four
This one. Price.
40.54.
Now it will try to multiply these two. Let's see how much value it shows. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a difference. So basically it will try to uh, roll up individual values to a worksheet, in the worksheet. Like first see client expression is always trying to do at lowest level and do the sum. Okay,
Okay.
but client expression behave differently. Okay, first take up everything, sum it up, take
Okay.
everything, sum it up, and show as a final value.
Okay.
Okay, so basically this mainly useful for a display purpose. Okay, we
Okay.
we we rarely use, so no, most of the time we go for the server expression only.
Okay.
Okay, so basically what you can see, somebody ask, right, client expression, server expression different. 99% will ask this question. Server expression is built on top of a database columns.
Okay.
Okay, and it will calculate the do the calculation at the lowest level, and then it will aggregate and show the numbers.
Okay.
Okay, but client expression do at a series level, at aggregated level.
Okay.
Okay, now see, you mentioned stored measure, right? No,
Yeah.
a series can see, there's a difference story. Okay, but when you talk about the difference between server expression, client expression, you should clearly say that server expression is built on top of a database columns, client expression is built on top of a series. Okay,
Okay.
and uh, the main difference is whenever you want to do the calculation at aggregated level, right, you go for the client expression. Okay, for
Okay.
example, if you have two C's, A and B, okay, okay, if you want to do A into B, if you want to see the calculation of those two series in a worksheet, then you go for a client expression.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, but if you want to see the data which is stored in the database, you can go with the server expression.
Okay.
Okay, they may ask you like, whatever you writing with the client expression, that you can achieve same with the server expression, they'll mention, right? Because see,
Yeah.
this one you can write with server, but the difference I mentioned, right? So server expression always does at the lowest level, combination level, and then does a sum at aggregated level. But client expression is different. First is sum of the series A, then sum of the series B, and show the total.
Okay.
Okay, that's how it works. So this is the main difference. Okay, now
Okay.
clear here.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll come to the point which you have discussed. Just make a note of those questions. Okay, even if I forgot, you can remind me. Okay, so edit lock expression. So this mainly useful generally to play around with the editable series. Okay, So since it's a non-editable series, right, this is what you call grayed out.
Okay.
This would be editable only for the editable series. Okay, so we'll
Okay.
talk about this when we go to the editable series. Okay, so
Okay.
basically in one line statement, the way we define it, to make conditional based locking of a series.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
If a measure is a editable series, if a series is a editable series, we want to make it locked based on the specific condition.
Yes.
Okay, so color expression is something uh, where you want to give some color coding to the series. For example, have this one, right? So I want to wherever I find history greater than 30 or greater than 20, right, I want to show it as green color,
Okay.
right? So greater than 30, greater than 20, these two, right, I want to green. Like whichever is less than 20, less than 20, right, I want to make it as red, right?
Mm.
Less than 20 this one, less than 20 this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this kind of color coding you can give in worksheet using this particular property.
Okay.
Okay, this is about the data properties.
Okay. Yeah, in the month end we log the expressions, like in the month end activity, we need to some log, no, log the previous worksheets, right?
No, not worksheets. Basically, you log the, see, locking is an automatic mechanism based on the expression. It will log the expression. It will
Okay,
log the
in the workflow we will log, I think, right?
in the
Workflow
no,
manager.
no, 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 no. See, there's no need to run any specific workflow for this. Okay,
Okay.
once you define a expression here, so automatically whenever your expression is satisfied, whenever the expression becomes true, that series is auto locked. There's no need to run any explicit process for that.
No, no, my question is one what we will do in the month end activity, like
What do you do in the month end activities?
yes,
Tell me. I didn't understand your question.
like we will log the previous month series, right? Previous month worksheet, so nobody can edit, right? This type.
No, don't say the worksheet, okay?
Okay.
You see, basically, I'll tell you the example, okay?
Yeah.
I'll give an example, but when you talk about the edit log, we'll see clearly, okay?
Yeah.
I have something called adjusted forecast series, okay?
Yes. Yes.
Now I'm a month of May,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
June,
Yes.
July,
Yes. Yes.
August,
Yes.
okay? So basically, some companies what generally do is they already send these forecast numbers to the production already, right? They
Yes.
might have confirmed those numbers, they might have freezed it. Okay,
Yes.
for example, in the May they might have 30, some 40, some 50, some 60. Okay,
Yes. Okay.
now already you have published these numbers to ACP or your planning system.
Okay.
Okay, so as per the business scenario already I sent, I like, I don't want to change the first two forecast periods of my forecast. Okay, so for example, today I'm in the month of May. Okay, tomorrow I'll move to June, right? So when I move to the month of June, already this becomes a past. Okay, but what are the first two buckets like June and July, which I had the forecast in the last month? I don't want to change those numbers. Okay,
Yes.
what I can do is based on the edit lock expression, I can log these two. Means I can make it as a gray
Okay.
so that users cannot edit this.
Okay.
Okay, you can edit from the future, only for the future. So based on specific scenarios, you can make it as editable or non-editable. A specific series, not a worksheet. Okay,
Okay.
so edit log expressions are meant for that. Clear?
Okay.
Next is security. So security, it's a simple, like basically whenever you create any series, right, you want to make sure you assign to a specific set of users, right? Like maybe you want to, like if you have 10 demand planners, you don't want to assign to all the planners, right? Maybe if you want to give access to only selected users, you can do that here.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the different properties of a non-editable series. Clear?
Yes.
Okay, so quickly we'll go around with the non-editable series and we'll close it. Okay, so we
Okay.
close the editable series. Okay, so we'll take example of history override. Okay. Mm, no, otherwise we'll stop here. Just I'll go with these properties, right? We'll continue this story tomorrow, but history will see in the table, like which table, like you're asking about internal name, right? I'll show
Yes.
you like which table you will tell, like, which table you see the details and all those stuff. Okay, so
Mm,
that in if they ask question also you should be able to answer. Okay,
mm,
see, all the series definitions are stored in computer underscore fields table. It's always stores in a computer
Computer.
underscore fields.
Okay.
Okay, so this is your table name.
Okay.
Now see, whenever you see this focus type id, right, this
Yes.
type id is nothing but your series id.
Okay.
Okay, so best way we can compare it is, let's try to query with this series name. Okay, that way you can with that particular series name, right?
Mm,
So my focus type id is 0, which is matching with your series id,
yes.
right? Series name, that in is your computer underscore fields, sorry, computer underscore title, which
Mm,
is somewhere here, right? Computer title is nothing but your series name. Okay, and your internal name. So internal name is computed name, I think. Computed name.
computer. Okay.
Okay. So basically, where you use this? Okay. What is important of this is, in Demantra you have something called export and import profiles, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this field is mainly used for that purpose when you are importing and exporting the data.
Okay. From the worksheet, right?
No, no, no.
Okay.
See, you want to send the forecast to ACP, right?
Yes.
What you have to do, you have to publish the data, you have to export the data, right?
Yes. Export. Yeah.
To export the data, you select some series, from which series you want to export the data.
Okay.
So when you try to export, it will create some staging table, correct?
Yes.
So staging table will have some columns, right?
Yes.
So that particular measure which you are exporting, that has to be stored in the table, correct?
Yes.
So the table will not store with this particular series name. The table gets created by using this internal, this computed name or the internal name of that particular series.
Okay.
Okay, for example, if I try to export this history series,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So a table gets created, like for example, BIEIO underscore export history, for example, that will
Mm.
have the column of sales.
Okay.
Nothing
Column
but,
itself. Okay.
yeah, that thing, but it's present to history series.
Okay.
Understood?
Yeah.
That's the main purpose. Okay.
It's sales is the uh, column name of staging table, right?
Yeah, we can say that. So basically, when you're trying to import or see if they somebody asks, right, what
Mm.
is the use of your internal name? So you
Yes.
should say, see, basically this mainly referred when you are trying to create an import or export profile.
Mm.
Like for example, if I'm trying to export a measure, if I want to export a data
Yes.
from a specific series, right?
Mm.
So whenever it creates an import export profile, export staging table, that series is referred with this internal name.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, we'll see when we go to the import and export functionality.
Okay.
Then it's your period association, A-double and non-A-double, right?
Yes.
It would be somewhere here. See here. History period type, it's three. Three, I think it's non-A-double, but both history and focused.
Mm,
Hmm?
okay.
There's something a A-double field also.
So how we will understand? It is mentioned three.
So that you'll understand based on your this one. See what you can do. You can create a custom. Let's see, do you have any lookup type here? There's no lookup type. See, since the standard variant, you cannot find the lookup also. See what you
Okay.
can do is you can play around with this series. Okay, for example, I'll make it as history. Okay,
Okay.
for your understanding purpose, okay, I'll save it. It was three, right?
Yes.
Let's see what value it will change to.
One I think. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, one. Okay. One is the history, second is the forecast, and third is the history plus forecast. I think.
So that's
Right?
why you can just play around with this. You'll understand. Okay, what to do is I'll not explain more on this.
Okay.
Okay, see what I want you to do is I gave you the table name, right? I'll
Okay.
I'll paste this in this Excel sheet. Okay,
Okay.
for your reference on these today's. Done. So query this table in your
Okay.
system. Okay, try to go through each field here, try to compare and find out the column in this table, so that way you'll try to, you can easily remember because you do some R&D, right? If I tell also maybe you'll forget, right? So just try to go through each property and try to see to which column it's matching, right?
Okay.
Okay, so that way it will be useful for you to understand. If you have any questions, let me know. But anyways, I'll go through this stuff again tomorrow. I'll explain all these fields in the table which are important, but I wanted to do some exercise, right? So
Okay.
so that way you can easily understand, right?
Okay.